understanding how the farming system works, farmers get a restitution every year. And they've been getting restitution every year since about 1933 after the New Deal. There were several packages and programs put in place to support farmers. Going back to, what's my guy's name, a pioneer, former vice president back in the 30s. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. But he set up, he's a father or founder of Pioneer Seed Company, which got bought out by Monsanto. But he set up initially for farmers to be able to get paid by not growing food. And if they grew food or didn't grow food, they still got a check. And that became the subsidy system that we know today. And if you can recall, most of us have went through this COVID period. And most of us, if you made less than $120,000 or $100,000 a year, you got a check from the government for $1,200 plus $500 for every child. And what did we do for that? Nothing. The money was just pretty much pulled out of thin air. You know, I didn't apply for it. I just got sent it. I mean, there was an advance on our taxes for the most part that we're going to apply for next year, or this coming year, I guess next year. And the way farm subsidies work, a lot of farmers also got relief. And they got relief in the form of what they call subsidies, where you could just apply and claim loss, and you would get another check from the government for usually a lot more than that amount, a lot more than $1,200. You got pretty much $150 per cow or per farm animal, and you got, you know, a certain amount per acre of land, and a certain amount per pound of vegetables that you potentially would have grown. And over the last 3 years, it's been almost $44 billion that's been given to farmers in subsidies, in emergency subsidies, not traditional subsidies, but just the tariff relief for China and the COVID, $44 billion. That restitution should definitely be given to black farmers. During the Pickford Act, if you know that lawsuit, black farmers sued USDA for discrimination and won the lawsuit. But, you know, they won it in the courts alone. They didn't win it with their farms. A lot of black farmers ideally still lost their land after winning the lawsuit because they set it up for them to lose. Most farmers who had gotten involved in that lawsuit had lost land or was in the process of losing land and had been indebted to the USDA, you know, usually hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they were only allowed to receive two different tracts of money. Plan A was $50,000, Plan B was all your debt relieved, and very few got all the debt relieved. Most of them got $50,000, and you know, it became the largest lawsuit in American history. And they, you know, black farmers got $3 billion, so maybe 6,000 farmers got about $50,000 a piece. Now, if you got a debt of $350,000 and they give you $50,000, you're still in debt. And that's what many farmers face. And the way those loans are set up, they're not like traditional loans where you just make a payment. They require lump sums. So you don't pay, you may pay $50,000, $75,000 at a time. So if you have a bad year, you're really up the creek. And the way those contracts are written is that you're over collateralized. You usually have to put up 100 to 150% collateral to get that loan. And then you can only get that loan when no one else will give you a loan. So they're considered to be the bank of last resort. And just like any other bank that has predatory like practices, you know, you got to put up a lot to get a little bit. And granted, you know, and then farming, as you know, you may know, is cyclical, seasonal. So there's a certain amount of time that you have to do certain things. And if you don't get that done in those windows, then you could miss out on the whole crop. So a lot of farmers got funding or couldn't get operation loans. And in those operation loans is when, you know, you get those things in January, February to buy your feed, fertilizer, etc. Put that in the ground so that in March you're plowing in the field so that come harvest time, you've gotten 2 or 3 rotations of crops and earn the money to pay back this loan. But if you don't get your money till, you know, June, July, planting season was back in May, you end up being behind 8 ball. So a lot of farmers have gotten a lot of really bad practices, really bad treatment because of these practices. So the restitution is old. You know, just forget the enslavement period. And the restitution is old from that period, from 1619 to 1865. The discrimination that happened between 1865 to 1965 is incredible. The discrimination that happened from 1965 to 2050, it's going to be incredible, because we keep getting the narrow end of the stick, the short end of the stick for the most part. And the money's there, as you saw with COVID, where Congress can create $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there to support whatever population they feel like needs it. So it's not like the money's not there. So when you rob the people, when you've taken advantage of a people, when you've done things that are unjust based upon from racial bias, implicit biasness, happenstance, even if it wasn't intentional, the fact that it happened, you're supposed to still be compensated for it. You know, we live in a litigious society. Only people that seem to be litigious are folks who are in power. The black farmer can't be litigious, can't afford lawyers enough so we couldn't take election to the courts. And a lot of things are decided in our county committees in the USDA. Very few black farmers sit on county committees. And those are usually the deciding factors for loan dispersion, for grants. For most programs through the USDA, they allow the local community to be able to decide who gets what, when, where, and how. And just like with anything, there can be aspects of corruption in that, where you look out for folks, or you even prey on folks whose land you may want. So restitution is definitely needed. I know people kind of get scared of the reparations and reparations talk, but whatever you call it, we need what we need. And we need, my calculations say roughly about 150 trillion is what is owed between, from all the discrimination that's happened over the last 150 years. And that's not even including the enslavement period, which we can just write off on our taxes. We'll write that off and it's give us 150 trillion. That's roughly $2.5 million per black person in America. And then after we do that, it's incumbent upon us to really look at how we repair Africa and pay reparations to them. We rarely look at that, but they had their best natural resource stolen. And if you can picture what Wakanda was on Black Panther, that's ideally what Africa would have been in 1900 without the invasion of European colonizers and capitalists. You rob the people of their progress, of their future, by taking young people as young as newborns into this place they call the New World and building up their economy and their structures to the T. So restitution is by far needed in every way, in every facet. And I hope, congressional folks, if you, whatever district you live in, whatever area you live in, write your congresspeople, write your delegates, write your senators, state senators, national senators, etc. We've got to be much more active in that political game. And it's not that you're playing politics, you're playing your interests. Politics is about policy. Policy is about your interests. We all have a vested interest in this country, in our communities. And if we don't speak up about those interests, and we don't speak up about those interests, we don't get anything for it. And a lot of times they're looking for us to be able to tell them what their needs are. And a lot of times there's a lot of older people who've progressed in this system who may be disconnected with the needs of what's happening on the ground, especially with younger generations, and what their needs are, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what opportunities they feel like they need to have. And this is all part and parcel of the restitution. So the Black Farmer Justice Act that's being proposed by Senator Booker and Senator Elizabeth Warren is to kind of offset and to really deal with a lot of these injustices that's happened, social and economic, in the USDA and in agriculture. And I am in total support. There was very little that I heard that there was nothing I heard that I didn't agree with. They're talking about doing a land bank. And this, in short, if you're ever familiar with the Freedmen Bureau and the Freedmen's Act, after 1865, that was the greatest span of time for African Americans in this country, from 1865 to 1877. 11 years, 12 years. That was the time when we had the most progress. And we need a Freedmen's Two, and I think that this Black Farmer Justice Act is a Freedmen's Two Act that allows us to, again, I won't say level the playing field, but at least give us some parity, repair some damages, and give us some opportunities in what is truly of value in this country, which is land. So they're proposing doing a land bank of about maybe 30 million acres that's going to be offered to existing farmers as well as new beginning farmers, better supporting and capitalizing HBCUs, supporting work programs for communities of color, or not communities of color, African American communities, to assist them with the farmers, to do mentor programs. Right now we have a 2501 grant, a program that's run through the USDA that was pretty much put in place for after the Pickford lawsuit, a way to deal with the discrimination going forward. It was initially asked that $100 million be put in that fund. I think, at most it's probably been about 20 million put in that fund. This past cycle was only 14 million put in that fund. And they opened it up to not just socially disadvantaged farmers, which includes African Americans, indigenous Americans, Hispanics, pretty much what we call minorities in this country. But they also opened up to veterans. And not any particular type of veterans, they just had to be in the military and usually discharged within 10 years. Sometimes even more than that, depending on what type of services they're offering, which really dilutes the pot quite a bit because veteran services and programs have been given a lot of priority over the socially disadvantaged farmers. And not saying that veterans don't deserve it, but my estimation, that should come out of the defense fund. That should come out of another pot of funds or another program through the USDA that doesn't take away from the black farmers. Because when you add, as we know, when we add more people to the pot, you just dilute the pot. And if you're already being shortchanged on the pot anyway, and if it was another thing, if it was $100 million that was being put in that fund and all the applications that was relatively viable would be honored and granted. But you have individuals competing all over the country for this $14 million at $400,000, $500,000 per grant. And it used to be up to $750,000 per grant. They continue to reduce it because of the reduction of the money. So this Black Farmer Grant is supposed to help to offset some of those. I encourage you during this holiday or whenever this is aired to write your congressperson, your local official, to ask them to support this act. They need sponsors, they need co-sponsors, they need support. This act is critical in trying to at least get us back up to that 50,000 farmer level in Virginia, to get us back to 1 million acres of land in Virginia that black people own. Right now we're at about 104,000 in the state. So we've gone down quite a bit. So it's really up to us to really, and to call on our local officials to, do the right thing. You got to pay the price. To me, it's no coincidence that COVID came out right after the 1619 to 2019 40th anniversary of our ancestors. Do right by us or else. Look at the Washington football team, and when they change their name, they seem to be doing a little better now. You gotta do right by us, or